It is so good to be together in worship on this first Sunday in Advent. And as you heard earlier, our theme is First Light for the season. A few weeks ago, I was on a retreat in the middle of nowhere in the Texas Hill Country with a group of clergy. We go and retreat every year. We were staying at a ranch that belonged to a friend of one of the clergy members of the retreat. And it was far away from city lights. And it was a dark night, that first night we were there, and a clear sky, moonless night, and the stars were spectacular. You could see the Milky Way spread across the sky. But it was dark. I wouldn't have dreamed of going for a walk on that ranch without a flashlight. But then the moon came up, and it was almost a full moon, and it was so bright that I could walk the caliche roads on that ranch without a flashlight, and I did just that. And it occurred to me as I walked, this is how people experienced darkness and light a long time ago. Maybe not so long ago as you might think. After the first service, I ran into a member of our congregation who told me that when he was a child, it was just like that. You don't have to go back that long when there were places without electricity, no artificial light, and real darkness at night. But for the hearers of Scripture, for those who wrote the words of Scripture, and they used that powerful image of darkness and light, for them, the image had tremendous power, tremendous impact in a way that it perhaps doesn't for us. And so all of those places where it speaks of darkness giving way to light and light coming into the darkness, the people who first heard those words and those who wrote them certainly knew what they meant. They knew the power of darkness to inspire fear and uncertainty. And they knew the power of light to dispel them. During the season of Advent, we are using the traditional themes for each Sunday: love, hope, joy, and peace in the Sundays in Advent. Today, we're talking about the light of love. Our scripture reading that you heard a moment ago simply says that God revealed His love to us in this way: by sending His only Son into the world that we might have life through Him. God revealed the love of God in the coming of Jesus into our world. In fact, as Christians, we are bold to declare the coming of God into our world in this particular, very special way. And what we are declaring is the light of love, a love that is radical, a love that is unconditional, a love that is transformational. The light of that love comes into our world in the birth of Jesus. Jesus said in the Gospel of John, "I am the light of the world. And anyone who follows me will walk in the light and not in the darkness." The light of love. But Jesus also said, "You are the light of the world." He said that to His followers. He said that to His followers who had experienced the light of love from Jesus and brought transformation to their lives. Many years ago, someone asked Billy Graham, "What is the greatest problem that we face in our world?" And the way he answered it was something like this. He said, the greatest problem, the problem that really is the underlying problem of everything else, is not racism, although racism is a terrible thing. He said it's not poverty, although poverty is awful. He said it's not war, as terrible as war is. He said there is a deeper underlying problem, and he said what it is a heart problem. He said what we need is transformation, change of heart, transformation of heart. See, it's that Jesus brings. The light of love is the transforming power of love that can transform our hearts and therefore our lives, so that when we receive this gift of light, we in turn can reflect that light. A few years ago, I was reading a devotional book, and one of them struck me in particular. It was an Advent devotional. It was written by somebody from the Midwest who had a garden in his yard, and one of the things he raised was a crop of potatoes. And he would place the potatoes in the basement of his home, around in a corner where they could get no light, so they wouldn't sprout. Because, of course, when potatoes are exposed to light, they will sprout green sprouts. And he went down into the basement one day to get some potatoes, and he was surprised when he rounded the corner to see that 2 or 3 of those potatoes had green sprouts. And he thought, well, that's not possible. There's no light down here. It's completely dark. Well, it's almost dark, but certainly it's dark over in that corner. And so he turned off the lights in the basement, and he just stood there and looked around trying to figure out, where is the light coming from that could cause life to sprout out of those 3 potatoes? And he looked at the window, but it's around the corner from the potatoes. And he looked around and he noticed a shiny copper pot hanging on the wall. And then he noticed that when the light hit it at a certain time of day, for a while it projected light down into that dark corner. And he wrote that at that moment he realized what his purpose was in life, what he was supposed to do and who he was supposed to be. He said, I'm supposed to be a copper pot. I'm supposed to reflect light into dark places so that life can spring up in those dark places, so there can be hope, so that there is transforming love that is reflected. See, we receive this gift of love so that we can re-gift it, so that we can give it away to others. The light of love that truly is transforming. And the key to that is in this season of Advent, which is one of the 2 most introspective seasons of the Christian year, the other one being Lent, where we look inside and we think about our own lives and our walk with Christ and how are we doing and where is the place of Christ in our lives? Is Christ at the center, as he should be, or off to the side somewhere? And during the season of Advent, we talk a lot about welcoming Christ into the center of our lives again, about having Jesus born anew in us. And so I thought about one of my favorite stories of a Christmas pageant. It's the story of a young boy named Wally, 11 years old, one of the biggest boys in his class. Very sweet kid, very friendly kid. And he was cast in the role of the innkeeper. Now, the way this pageant was written is the way most of the pageants are written, where the innkeeper is supposed to be sort of a heartless, mean character. Now, the fact is, in the Bible, there is the innkeeper never appears. It just talks about an inn. There's no room in the inn, and the inn is probably a guest room. But in all the Christmas pageants, there's an inn, like a Motel 6, I guess. And there's an innkeeper, and the innkeeper is never a friendly character. And that's the case here. And so Wally, being the sweet kid that he is, had a lot of coaching from the director of this Christmas pageant in his little church, over and over again coaching him that he had to be mean, he had to be tough, he had to say no to Mary and Joseph, and he had to do it with firmness and even rude about it. And so the dress rehearsal went just fine, but it came time for the performance, and the moment came when Mary and Joseph appeared at the door of the inn, knocked on the door, and he answered the door, and he said, "What do you want?" And Joseph said, "Well, sir, we would like to have a room in your inn, a place to stay." "Well, we don't have any room. There's no room in the inn," he said. "Yes, but sir, my wife is expecting a baby, and we need shelter for the for the child that's about to be born. Well, there's no room in the inn, he said. He did it very well. He was gruff just as he was supposed to be. But then there was dead silence. And it's never good in a play when there's dead silence and everybody's looking at each other. And there's a prompter, and the prompter is reading the line that the innkeeper is now supposed to say, "Be gone. Be gone." And finally, Wally hears his line and says, "Be gone." And Mary and Joseph turn, sadly walking away. And this is where things went a little different. Wally, sweet kid that he was, said, "Wait! You can have my room." And the director was pulling out her hair and thinking, the Christmas pageant is ruined. But here's the interesting thing. Ask the people through all the years what Christmas pageant they remember, and unless they were in it, they don't remember any of them except the one that Wally was in. Because it was unusual, yes, but because Wally spoke the truth and gave the message that everyone there and all of us here need to hear. And that is, in our lives that are so busy, so packed with all kinds of, so full of worries and cares and fears, that we don't have room, at least not in the center of our lives. So the message for us is to make room, to receive the light of love as a gift so that we can reflect that love in our world that sometimes is very dark. See, it's the chief way that God brings light into the world now. It's through reflecting. It's like the copper pot. And we go from this place into sometimes dark places to be copper pots. We need to be reminded of that. I want to close with this story. This comes from Chicken Soup for the Soul, which is a wonderful little book, came out years ago. A little girl named Shia, 4 years old, became a big sister. Baby brother was born. And she very early on started to say to her parents that she wanted to be alone with her baby brother. Well, babies are, very fragile. And her parents weren't sure that they should have Shia be alone with her baby brother, and she wouldn't tell them why. They finally decided that they would allow her to do that, and she was thrilled. And she went into the room where her baby brother was, and the parents, of course, had the door open about like this, and they were watching and listening. She went up to her baby brother, and she leaned over close, and she said, "Tell me what God is like. I've almost forgotten. Tell me what God is like. I've almost forgotten." You know what? We almost forget. And season of Advent is a time when we can strive to lay aside some of our worries and our burdens and remember. And it's a baby that helps us remember. Our scripture for today says it. God revealed God's love to us in this way, by sending God's only Son into the world, that we might have life through him.